What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship podcast. This is episode 68, and today I am talking to the purveyors of test depth. It's a bunch of submarine veterans that they basically created a clothing and lifestyle brand based on their observation, which is funny because it's similar to mine on like chief stuff and naval heritage stuff, where it was their observation that there wasn't really a submarine, submarine representation in the lane of like clothing and lifestyle stuff. It's like we all are extremely proud of what we do for a living, and for whatever reason, there's not a brand out there that's fits the taste of young people primarily, I think, but even just like a more professional and like higher end style. And I really appreciate where they're going with it, and I'm a big fan of it because I go into the Navy prize section at like the Next or something looking for a shirt and can't find anything I'd actually wear in public. So I'm a big fan of the concept. They also do a podcast called Only on the Midwatch. They're trying to create like a basically just like a little bubble for submariners in a lot of different ways. And so they do a cool podcast where it's a bunch of bubbleheads generally just talking about bubblehead things. So it's pretty cool. I enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoy the interview. Cord, you guys should see the waveform and all that stuff. It says recording in progress.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see that.
Cool.
How's our sound quality?
It's pretty good, man. You guys sound good. I've done everything from like people with fucking gaming headsets and AirPods on and shit. So you guys sound good.
Okay. Cool.
So like I said when we talked before I clicked record, I don't care who starts, but just give you guys like a quick background, what you guys have done, and then kind of what led you to what you're doing now, and then we'll go from there. And we can get into the details of how test depth and on the Midwatch started probably later, so you don't have to get into that. Just like kind of background in the Navy, etc.
Yeah. All right. Oh, right now?
Yeah, right now.
I thought you were gonna do like an introduction or something.
No, I record it all separately, so you'll hear that at the beginning of the episode. But yeah, go ahead, man.
Okay, my bad. So I'm Ellison, and I decided to join the Navy back in 2014. It was actually a long process, but I was trying for like a couple years. But I joined the Navy. I didn't actually think I was gonna be in the submarine force because I was one of those like cocky people who were like, "Oh, I'm gonna
be
go
Navy
like,
SEAL Rambo when I grow up."
Yeah, exactly. I was like, "This is not going to work out." I'll just.
I was too. If it makes you feel any better, I ended up a cook.
I think every young man had dreams of being a Navy SEAL at some point,
for sure.
Yeah, and so it ended up going that I left for boot camp as a submarine or on a submarine contract, and that was all good and fine. And I, had a good time in sub school, and then I got to my first boat, the USS Helena, out of Naval Station Norfolk, and
God.
And I had a good time on that boat, and I did one deployment, and saw some cool things, did some cool stuff, and then I got out of the Navy in 2019, the summer of 2019, and moved to Colorado and started going down a different path of setting up test depth and our podcast Only on the Midwatch, and going from there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I like kind of accidentally joined the submarine force.
I got drunk on my way to college.
Well, it was like I was trying to join the Navy, but I was doing the whole like we just talked about. I was trying to be a SEAL, and I had done all the testing for it, like the physical tests, and I passed everything, and I was getting ready to get put in the draft, and then they saw that I had a knee surgery in my medical history, and they're like, "Oh, you need a waiver for that." And I was like, "Okay, how long is that gonna take?" And they're like, "About 3 months." And I was like, "Well, I'm supposed to go to boot camp in 2 months with those orders that you gave me that I was just gonna switch out for the SEAL contract when I got that." And they're like, "Yeah, we can't change that because you signed up for submarines." I was like, "Well, why didn't you guys tell me not to sign up for submarines?"
Because they wanted to fill that submarine quota.
Yeah, that's how they get you.
Fucking recruiters. I love you guys, but recruiters, man, Jesus.
Yeah, they got me good.
Yeah, they got all of us good, but
I don't regret it, honestly, though. Like I had such a good time on my boat, and did 2 deployments, CENTCOM and ECOM, so I got to travel a ton with the Navy. It wasn't like vacationing, but it was travel. So
yeah,
went over to Submarine Special Projects out in Washington from Norfolk, and worked with the newly established UUV squadron, unmanned underwater vehicles, and worked there for a couple of years and got out. And now I'm doing government contractor work out in San Diego. Right now I'm working with unmanned surface vessels. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's sick, man. Yeah, I did some project stuff on a submarine, and it was awesome. Coolest shit I've ever done in my life. Here I'm telling you guys not to curse, and there I go. Look at me. That's because I started. Lead by example. Awesome. So yeah. So how do you guys know each other? You guys on the same boat?
Yeah, we were on the Helena together. He was actually Josh was there before I got there, and I think we kind of connected on the fact that we did have the similar induction into the submarine force.
Yeah,
where we're like, Bud's helpful people, and when you get to the, I think we all remember when you get to your first boat, you kind of you find the people that you're most similar to.
Yeah.
And so Josh was one of those people.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's hilarious that you guys both said that too, because like I did the same thing. And then when I was a command career counselor on that project's boat, and every single CDB I ever did, they're like a nuke mechanic. It's like you're not doing anything but being a nuke for the rest of the time you're in the Navy, unless you get disqualified medically or something. And it's like he's like, I want to be a Navy SEAL, and it's just like, well, then why are you here? Like, how did this happen? Yeah. You clearly don't want it that bad because you might have Googled some stuff before you ended up here, but. It's pretty hilarious how many people have that story. But I was like, I wanted to be an FMF corpsman, so like it's hilarious. And then I was like, and then maybe if I like that, I'll because I have Vietnam veteran Marine uncles, and then my dad was a Vietnam vet in the Navy, and so it's like those dudes. Like my mom has these crazy stories, like my uncle like waking him up for lunch, and he like jumps out of bed and he's like throwing her against the wall and stuff, and because he's like, like he saw some crazy stuff in Vietnam as a Marine, and he's an infantryman doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and so I was like real cautious because I had heard these stories. Like he basically died from like rampant cocaine use. He was like a investigative journalist in Detroit, and he was a dude with demons, and so like I heard all that growing up, and I knew that story, and then I knew like my other uncles and some of the like kind of heard a little bit, like it's not something they talked about a lot, but like I knew the cautionary tale piece, so I was like, maybe I'll try that, and if I like being an FMF corpsman, then I'll do that. And then same kind of thing. Like I showed up to boot camp, and there, I had a drug waiver for marijuana, and said the same thing over and over again. But when I got there, they had shockingly, MEPS had screwed up my paperwork, and it said something about alcohol abuse. I'm like, bro, I haven't drank ever. Like I have alcoholic parents. Like I don't. I'm like, this isn't right. And so I'm thinking to myself, like maybe I want to make this career. I don't want my record to be screwed up. So at the moment of truth, I'm the idiot that's like raising my hand in the back, going,
no.
Yeah, yep. I was that guy, man. I was trying to like be honest and do the things that I thought I was supposed to do, honor, courage, and commitment, and all that. So I get up, and I get up, and this dude, I don't know who he was, some chief, and some other people were in the room. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but I'm like, yeah, this says alcohol abuse. I had a drug waiver, and they're like looking through the paperwork, I'm like, oh, you had a drug waiver, and they're like, yeah, for what? And I was like, oh, it's for marijuana. And they're like, how many times did you use it? Because he found the original paperwork. And I said twice. Is it 2 times like that? And that's the same thing I said to my recruiter. It's the same thing I said at MEPS when they gave me the waiver. Like, and he, that's not what this says, recruit, and just starts face blasting me. Oh my God. So then I had to redesignate in boot camp, and all I'd ever done is cook. Because they were like, I have a high ASVAB score. I was a dude. They were like, we'll give you $25,000 and be like a IS or like some flavor of CT and all this other crap. And here my idiot is going like, hey, I want to be a cook, and they're like, no, you don't, you want to do this. And I'm like, man, it's the only thing I see in this, because all I had was a Blue Jackets manual with like the little descriptions of like what you could do for a living. And I was freaking out. Like they said, like I talked to the reclassifier guy like once, and he's like, you got like 2 days to decide, and then when you come back you're gonna have to pick. And so I was like, I'm gonna be a cook, man thing. Yeah. And then I ended up at A school, and one of the chiefs that ran it was a submariner. And for whatever reason, because like I've run the CSA school since then, and they didn't let me funnel people to submarines, and I wanted to, because that was right when Enlisted Women on Submarines came out, and there was a bunch of female students that were super gung ho and wanted to do it. Not like a ton. I mean, we had like a 60-40 split female to male, and it was like you'd get like one every other class. but that was like, hell yeah, that ridiculousness sounds cool to me. The rest of them didn't want anything to do with it. And, but he had the power apparently to like recruit submariners. So that's how I ended up on submarines. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, so I'm pumped to talk. Like, I want to know about test depth, and I want to know about on the Midwatch, like, which I'm familiar with because I own a t-shirt, and I've listened to a few podcasts.
Oh yeah.
It's a sick shirt, man. I took it with me on my TAD trip. I love that thing. But we'll get to that at the end, because I'm a big supporter of veteran-owned businesses as well. I just want to like blast you guys out there, and hopefully it gets you guys some business. But also, like, because you guys are effectively junior enlisted submariners, it's interesting for me because, like, I'm on the cusp of being a cob. Like, I had this misadventure with cancer this year, so if they might tell me no, medically wise, but I'm almost qualified, and I plan on, if I get cleared, I'm going to go be a cob. And I'm super interested to have conversations about like what your experiences were with Chiefs on the boat, and then like what if they were negative, why, and kind of we'll get into some of that, and then especially like what you guys looked for or wanted in a cob if you didn't already have it. But you can start with wherever you want, but like I'm super curious as to like how you guys perceive Chiefs, what your relationships were with them. If you have any examples, that'd be awesome. But like kind of what your perception was of them when you were on your boat.
Yeah, I'll let Josh go first, just because he got to E6 and he's got more experience with it, and then I'll give it from a less experienced version afterward.
Yeah, so I guess it was, my experiences were very wide and varied. They it very much depended on the personality and how it meshed with my personality. Yeah. And I was a pretty driven person individually. So there was never anybody that had to force me to do anything. I was always looking for ways to do my job right. So I very rarely had a negative interaction that was for coming from someone in a position of leadership. But I could definitely tell who actually had, it's almost like a talent and a natural talent to be a good leader. There is definitely things that you can learn and get better at, but there's also like, you got it or you don't sometimes. Some people are just, they're kind of introverted, and they don't express themselves well to other people. And that is a huge drawback for someone who's, a junior person coming out to a new place, and you don't have someone that's a good leader. I had a really good chief, and I had a not so good chief. I had some okay first classes, I guess. But as far as like senior leadership, I had everything from a really like it's happened to CO that you would never want to, if you were talking to the CO, you probably messed up. Yeah. And everyone kind of shut up when he entered the room, because no one wanted to get yelled at. And then I had the CO that like every time he walked in the room, people started joking with him. Like he was a really cool guy, and we talked to the guy to this day like he's a friend.
Do you think that like so part of the natural talent for leadership that I think people point at and recognize as that, like, do you think that it's more like it's just like an authenticity, or like a person's ability to just be empathetic and care about you guys, and like that's what's coming across? Or do you think it's like just somebody's born with like a no joke natural leadership talent?
Man, I really do think that it's like, you ever played baseball as a kid?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're really young, there's not a whole lot of skill, right? Like, there's just everyone kind of sucks a little bit, but there's always like one or two kids they're just good. Like how does a kid like a kid that's like 13 years old, 14 years old, throwing 80, 90 miles an hour? Like how is that possible? It's straight up just natural. Yeah. And sometimes there's people that are, even you could tell when they're really young that like they're well spoken, they do what they need to do, they are like and genuinely nice to other people, and not just being nice because they have to be. And they're approachable, and then they grow into a leader. You can see them growing into a position of leadership. And then you could tell the difference between a leader that like really has the trust of the people that work for him. And you could tell the difference between a leader who people just kind of give into him, because if you don't, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, it's going to hurt more than if you resist. Yeah, like that's
yeah.
So I think part of it is definitely. Oh, sorry, my computer screen went black for a second.
There you go.
I think part of it is definitely natural, but I also feel like Josh was saying, there's a small percentage of people who just have it naturally, who just like, you can tell, you meet them and interact with them and you're like, this guy is just a people person and he's selfless, and that, naturally manifests into good leadership. I think the most from my experiences, I feel like even with what's going on in our society now, I feel like poor leadership has a lot to do with the lack of empathy, whether that's your choice to not be empathetic, or whether you just as a person like aren't naturally empathetic. But whenever I see people who like, I feel like don't have like the best leadership qualities, and I see someone who does have good leadership qualities, it's always to do with empathy. I mean, as far as like the first thing that tells me whether or not they're good or not is because if you can have empathy and put yourself in someone else's shoes, you would understand that, the things that make you not a good leader aren't the things that you would want to do, because it's in turn not good for the person you're trying to lead, your subordinate. It makes their life difficult however you're going to be. But if you're empathetic, you make that choice to be empathetic, you're only going to come at it from a place of genuineness, and be like, I wouldn't tell you to do anything that I wouldn't do, and this is why I'm telling you to do this, because this is how it makes sense, and this is what affects the overall picture. So
right. Yeah, and the empathy thing's interesting, because I've been talking lately a lot about like humanizing Chiefs, just because I feel like there's this weirdness that happens when you make the transition, where it's like we say a lot of the things that sound good. Like we say, I mean, I don't know if the word empathy is said much but outside of people like me, but like they say like, lead by example, and like almost exactly what you just said verbatim about don't, not having your people do things you're not willing to do, and explain it if you can and make it make sense to them and build that trust and all that stuff. And like we like lead from the front, lead by example, all those things. Like you hear a lot of that stuff parroted during the Chiefs season, but then when you like while you're going through initiation, you just feel this need to like act a different kind of way. Like, oh, I'm a chief now, so I gotta like conform to this environment around me. And it's a lot of times kind of weirdly vague about what that even means. So they just start trying to fake it till they make it, and they start like living those caricatures that we all make fun of when we're junior enlisted about like all the dumb stuff Chiefs do. And so it's this weird pressure where they feel like they have to be right all the time, and they feel like they have to like, uphold the standards and hold people accountable and do all those things. And apparently that means like walking around knife handing people and like ruling with an iron fist, and none of that works ever. Like there's moments for coercive, like authoritative leadership, but they are super rare. I mean, it's bizarre.
I think that's like a good segue into my experience with like leadership and Chiefs in general. Okay. Is for me, mine was only limited to 5 years of active duty service. Right. But for me, I felt like it was very clear in the military to see who was like drinking the Kool-Aid and who kind of was like not about that. And that's kind of like what made me either like a chief or not. Make me want to like genuinely follow a chief, or just be like, I'm just going to comply because it's in my best interest. There's the chiefs that like are like, I'm a chief, I've got anchors on, respect the goat locker because that's the way it is. And there's a lot of them. That was a lot of my experience.
That's what I mean by like that type of thing. It feels like that's the thing that when they walk in and read the room, they're like, oh, I got to be that. I got to conform to that. Like there's that pressure. It's weird.
My favorite chiefs though were the ones who, because I'm not naive. Like there's a game that we're all playing, whether it's the Navy, whether it's life, whether it's, I don't know, your personal relationships. There's a game and you've got to play it. And it's kind of annoying, but that's just how it is, right? Yeah. So we've all got to play this. We've all got to play this freaking game. But my favorite Chiefs were the ones that like just did it so like gracefully that you didn't really have to try to cut through their BS, like they were like, I am a chief and we do have like this ranking recognition structure, but like, you understand, like they just led by example, or if they couldn't necessarily explain things to you right off the bat, their track record and consistency was so on par that you didn't have to question it. Like I didn't have to, I knew they were good people because of the walk that they walked for months that I've known them,
Yep.
So
yeah, man,
that's how I feel about it.
I feel like it's a weird conversation to have, but it's like, I feel like Chiefs need to be like, when you're indoctrinating them into this culture, which that's what's happening during initiation, is it's like I feel like the conversation needs to be prioritized that like, look, this is a thing you do. That's not who you are. And I think that's what the line that you're talking about is like, the people that are doing it right and taking care of you because they know you're like, if I die tomorrow on my gravestone, I wanted to say like, it's about the people, like the people are the mission, like because what fails to get understood is like Chiefs like to be like, we're the backbone of the Navy. It's like, no, you're not. Like that's junior sailors are. Like your only job is to take care of them so they can do the mission. That's your only job. And like on submarines, that line gets blurred a little bit because like I was sitting in the dive chair for like 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. So like I was part of actually doing it instead of just leading. But it's like realistically, like our primary mission as Chiefs is to take care of you guys so that you're best equipped to do the thing, because like your guys are the ones doing it. Like I'm the one that's like planning and like organizing the logistics of and training and doing all the things to get you ready, giving you time off if you needed to go, get ready. But yeah, man, I don't understand why we get into this weird place where it's like so much value is placed on the Chiefs mess. It's weird because it's like not that there's not value there. Like I am a Kool-Aid drinking true believer. I posted this thing on Instagram and Facebook yesterday. It's like pictures of the room I'm standing in right now. And it's because I was doing those Teaching of the Creed podcasts, and it's like we're talking about these things and I'm criticizing certain aspects of and saying like just pointing at the weak spots and saying we can do better. Doesn't mean I am the dictionary definition of a Kool-Aid drinking true believer as far as like what Chiefs can do and like the mess and the history and heritage and all those things. Like I love it, but it's like, because I love it, I want to point at the weak spots and be like, we can do better. And that, I think that's what you're describing is like, look, man, like this is not your identity. This like, go ahead.
I think the Kool-Aid drinking is absolutely, I would say necessary and good. It's like not a bad thing. Like, I mean, I think that people who are gung-ho about whatever branch of service they're doing, whatever position they're filling, or whatever job they do, I think that's great. I mean, you want to be positive. You want to enjoy your job. You want to motivate individuals to buy into that so you guys can make a good team. But I had a senior chief who's a master chief now. I think he's probably done being a cop, but he was very effective in my opinion because one, he had years of experience, and part of it kind of goes with his personality, but he could read people, read the guys in the division and understand how he needed to speak to them to get them to complete day-to-day tasks, right? Like, for example, he might talk to petty officer or PO2 and explain to him exactly why we got to get this update done or something like that. Whereas he might talk to PO3 and be like, I need you to go over there, and not really give him much of an explanation, but like he knew exactly how he had to talk to people to get things done. And where you have another chief, however, who might be like his or her entire time before he got to chief, he was just like, man, I can't wait to make second class so I can tell these dudes what to do because I don't want to do it. Or like there's not like some chiefs make chief and they don't have the character that is indicative of a good chief or a good leader. And unfortunately, that's where I think that's the responsibility of the chief's mess and whatever powers that be that reviews these chiefs, prospective chiefs evals and stuff like that. It needs to be better to figure out how developed that person's character is. Are they actually ready to be chiefs yet? Or are you just going off of their evals because they have X collateral duty and they filled C billets for, 2 times now and this, that, and a third? I mean, if you really want to have like a highly efficient and motivated unit, character is important.
Yeah. And that's what's gross about it is I have a lot of conversations about truth and reporting, right? And it's just like, we're talking about evals. And you're in a position where you're reviewing a record. You only have like the things reviewed at a Chiefs board are you have the PSR, which is like a summary of evals and like the commands you've been at and all that stuff. So it's just like if you've ever logged into BOL and clicked your ODCOs or PSR, it's just like a summary of all your promotion ratings, your trade averages in relation to your CO's average for that group. And then just got like the command you were at and all that crap. And then you've got, their actual evaluations, like the PDF file that's like their actual no joke evals. You got it's field codes, like, so you go for, I think it's 30 to 38, but so like you'll have like adverse information, admin remarks, awards, and then if they submit a letter to the board with like stuff they thought was missing that the board should see, blah blah blah. So but that's all you have, and the primary document is the evaluation. So like if block 43 says you're the greatest thing ever, and you're punching all the wickets and you're progressing and you're ranked and you've got the promotion ratings you should have and blah, blah, blah. That's all you have to go off of. Even if I'm sitting there, like even if the board member knows that guy personally, and he's not a guy that should, not somebody that should be promoting the chief, you're not like, number one, if I know the guy personally, I'm not supposed to be the one doing that because there's a conflict there, but you can't bring any of that into it. You can't, like, if I know some information that isn't documented in a guy's record, I can't say anything. So it's like you have to like bite your tongue, and it's like the reporting seniors that are responsible for documenting that, like the chiefs that are writing those first classes evals, like, and it's gross too because our system is set up in a way where it's like you can either say like good things, better things, or like really great things. Like I can't say like you're not ready. I can't write in any. I have to like write this code to the board that says like Petty Officer Smith has the potential to develop into an outstanding leader, and like not mention the word chief in block 43. And that's communicating to and then like there's some other markers like how your trade average relates to the CO's average and all that other crap. But
at that point, my question would be like, who's if we have a system basically that's set up to allow individuals to reach the level of chief or, a leadership rank just because they're in long enough, even if they don't have like the normal, they're on pace as far as their progress goes, ladder wise. If they can just make chief from being in long enough and doing what they need to, at that point, whose responsibility is it to make sure that we're trying to get this chief to be the right kind of chief he's supposed to be? Is there an idea? Do we even know what kind of chiefs are supposed to be?
Well, God, there's so many questions there. So first, I don't think the system is necessarily like it. If you have ridiculous quotas every year, then yeah, I mean, people are promoting that probably shouldn't be. That's the opinion that I hold, that because I've seen it happen. Where, like if you've got somebody that's got like greater than a 50% promotion, like quota, like a whatever, you know what I'm saying? I'm butchering words right now, but like if it's greater than 50%, that's like, it's too many, because you get into this place where you're grading a record that is like, it's somebody that's just existing. Like I had a cop that used to say that guy's just stealing oxygen when we were underway. Like they're not doing anything. They're just like barely staying qualified to watch. And they're not like going out of their work center or going out of their normal career progression or doing any of the, like punching any of the blocks. Like they qualified senior and rate and then just stopped and just started existing, and that's it. And so it's like that guy probably shouldn't be a chief or girl. Like, I mean, I've only had enlisted ride a boat, but we had female officers on my last submarine, but it's I don't think it's necessarily set up that way, but it does happen because if you got a giant quota, like most of the time, and quotas do get returned probably more often than people think, but I don't think enough quotas get returned, and I don't think it happens often enough where they just decide, look, like, because if you read the precepts, you've got fully qualified, which is like meets the bare minimum requirements to be a chief. And then you've got best of fully qualified. So we basically identify who's fully qualified. And then you decide, okay, of that group that is actually qualified to the bare minimum requirements, we start based on the quota selecting like who the best of that group is. But sometimes like you have 60 quotas and you only have 40 fully qualified people. And there's a lot of times where groups are just like, because a lot of the stuff is subjective. If you ever, I'm dorking out on this a little bit, but if you ever go to the enlisted community manager page for your career field, you'll have, they used to call it a ladder. Now they call it a enlisted community path, I think. Enlisted career path. God, community, not community. Enlisted career path. And it's just where kind of like the things you should be doing as you progress. And then at the bottom it says considerations for somebody promoting from E6 to E7, E7 to E8, E8 to E9. And it lists a bunch of stuff. So submarine supply, like we have hard and fast requirements, like thou shalt be an LPO at sea or shore. That's a fully fully qualified. And then you have to be qualified either leading LS or leading CS. It's just it's a qual in Gnosis or CTQS or whatever. Yeah. Yep. And so you have to have those two things bare minimum. And then obviously like not suck record wise. Like you have to at least be punching the promotable block. That's technically fully qualified. And then best of is like, you're looking for chief of the watch, you're looking for duty chief, you're looking for dive, you're looking for all those things. And like sustained superior performance in leadership positions at sea is the number one consideration. So you have all those things, but a lot of them are considerations, like that word, like, so it's subjective. So you end up with people promoting that probably shouldn't. So there's that piece of it. The second part of it is like, whose job is it? It's the chief's mess job, unfortunately, sometimes. So like when people promote that shouldn't be, it's technically it's the chief's mess doing it. So we own that. Because every year you see like the board membership, the people that are going there and selecting chiefs, it's a whole bunch of senior chiefs and master chiefs doing it. So that we select ourselves and then we're then stuck with the result of that, operating within a system that direly needs updating because of the quota driven system. Like you get certain ratings where everybody's lighting the world on fire and you don't have a lot of quotas just based on the construct of that community. So you get a whole bunch of like EP Sailor of the Year types that I'm picking from that group. And then you get, like, God help me, but like CSSs, you get guys that are like, they're real scared to get out of the galley because their normal career progression, it's like you're set up in a way where you're in this little bubble almost where you're not doing a lot of the normal submarine things except for getting your dolphins. And so like quals freak cooks out a lot of time. Like it was a little harder for me. Like once I got up there and started doing it, I'm like, oh, I can do this. Like this isn't that hard, but it takes me a while to grasp that stuff. I'm not a mechanically inclined human. So like I'm looking at schematics and learning valve numbers and power supplies and how all these systems interface so that I can drive the submarine and, organize damage control, response from control and all that crap. It's like that it still freaks me out, man. I never got used to stand and dive. Like I was terrified every watch. But it was, I don't blame you. Still to this day, can't believe they let me do that. And now they're probably gonna let me be a cob, which is hilarious. So it's on the Chiefs mess. Like, and I say that a lot, like there's this thing that happens during Chiefs initiation at the end and it's called acceptance, right? So it's supposed to largely be, a symbolic event, right? So you go through all the initiation thing as a select where you're not a first class anymore, but you're not quite a chief. So you go through all this training, you do all the things, there's all these milestones, and you get to that point at the end of like the final night events, like all the things that people think are like we're sacrificing like effigies in the woods or something. Like it's that final night thing. At the end, there's a moment called acceptance where they do, sometimes it's a bunch of like cobs and mass chiefs and stuff. Sometimes it's just everybody in the Chiefs mess. And they have to get to a point where it's pretty easy to recognize. Like generally people get emotional in some way, whether it's like they get passionate and start yelling or they break down and start crying or whatever, but they get to the point where they let their guard down finally and decide to trust us. And at that point you're accepted. Right. And it's a symbolic thing. Like you're waiting for that moment of recognition in their minds where it's like, just let it go, man. Like, like just be emotionally vulnerable with us, trust us. And then that's it. And that's the moment where they're like, all right, you can see it in their eyes immediately. The recognition where like, okay, we got them. It's sometimes warped. Yeah, it's sometimes warped into this weird thing where people are just like, no, they're not ready. They're not ready. I'm not accepting them. They're not ready. And I'm like, okay, dummy. Like, this is not a literal moment of acceptance. It's a symbolic moment where, because if you get to that moment and you have a chief select that you're just vehemently opposed to putting on anchors, guess who failed? It wasn't the chief select. Like, I know you want to point the finger and say, yeah, the Chiefs failed to train that person, because I just spent how many years writing in Block 43 that they're the greatest thing since freaking Wonder Bread, and then they got promoted. Whoops. So now I need to decide, like, to do my job because I didn't earlier, apparently. I don't know, like, whoever if this idiot is deciding at that moment that they didn't get, that they're not like worthy or whatever. It's like somebody screwed up along the way, right? Or they didn't, and you're just doing a crap job of shepherding them through the initiation season. But when you get to that moment, it's not literal, it's figurative, it's symbolic. So it's, if you get to that moment and you're deciding like this person is just going to make a crappy chief, well, that's, you failed as a leader. And the mess owns that. Like, Chiefs failed there, and Chiefs need to like pick up the pieces, put them back together, and train that person, hold that person accountable. Sometimes it's character flaws, like you were talking about earlier, where like they know what they're supposed to do. They're competent enough to do it. They're just, there's character flaws there where they want to cut corners, or they want to like sit in the quarters with a coffee mug, or they want to be tyrants or whatever. It's very and that's what I could go on for days, man. You guys got me fired up about this topic.
Obviously, this is we're just enjoying listening at this point.
Yeah, no,
this is what junior people talk about.
I'm gonna get butchered on Reddit because I talk about interviews and they're like, it's not even an interview. You're the only one talking. Why'd you even bring them on? I'm like, it's a discussion. I started calling them discussions. So shut up. But yeah, man. And then the last part of it is like, it's hard to explain, but it's like the leaders that come out the other end, it's like it never stops. And I think, and that's why I talk so much about like the culture of the Chiefs mess and how culturally I think we need to change. And a big thing I was talking about during the Teaching the Creed episodes is the Chiefs Creed, which, if you guys have never read that, I encourage you to read it and then start scratching your head with a confused look on your face, because it's not really a creed. It's like it's a great paragraph, and there's a lot of good things in it. There's some stuff that I don't like. The word exalted appears. So just like, I'm like, come on, like just one. And they caveat it with the word exalted is used advisedly, but whatever that means. But I'm just like, come on, like the one line that and figure, get a thesaurus in your life. But it looks like what it appears to me, just based on the number of years of experience training Chiefs, what it looks like is somebody like, hey, we need a creed. What's that? Oh, well, it's like this thing that says what we do. And somebody had like this really great paragraph from a Chiefs pinning ceremony script. And they like, this is great. Let's use this. And if you really examine, like look at the Sailor's Creed, look at the Navy ethos, look at any creed. Like I did the episode I did where we talked about this at length was with a Naval Special Warfare tech that had been to Ranger School, and he like read the Ranger Creed to me. I think it might have been Airborne School, one of those. And it's I statements or we statements. It's very definitive. Like, this is who we are and what we do. And it's like, there's no question about what our mission is and what our values are. And like, this is where we're going. Get behind and follow, you kind of thing.
But the Chiefs Creed sounds like he told a third class to do it.
No, I mean, it's vague. There's a lot of room to read between the lines, and some of the room that they allowed for like reading between those lines is troubling, because it's like, when you read it, it's like, it talks about like privileges, which that word I just want to like strike from our vocabulary, but talks about privileges and responsibilities do not appear in print. Okay, that's a problem. Somebody needs to write them the fuck down then, because that's like I'm the guy that's like always fired up about like, where's the book? Like, where's the policy? And then it talks about the exalted thing, and like it talks a lot about like how you're entering this fellowship of like these great like leaders, I guess, that it's like you now have to carry the burden of like maintaining that, which is true. And there's a lot of really good stuff in there, but then it compares us right now. It compares us to other services. Yeah. It compares us to other services. NCOs is like, we're better or something, which I hate. It's not even a little true. I actually think there's things that we should probably do more like the Army and the Air Force and the Marine Corps do. But yeah, if you read it, man, it's like you don't. There are good things, there are bad things, but what you don't walk away from it with is a really clear vision of who we are and what we do. And I think that's like a giant statement. Problem. Yeah, it's a giant problem because then the whole organization is built on a faulty foundation. You're like, why are we doing the things that we're doing? And you're like, I don't know, go back to the source document. Well, what's that? It's the creed. And then you read it. And it literally, like the podcasts I'm recording for the course that we facilitate every year, that's a requirement before you can frock a chief, is called Teaching to the Creed. And it's based on excerpts from what you're reading right now. And it's like, read that and tell me that doesn't illustrate to you that, like, why we have some of the problems we have. You know what I mean? Like,
well, what do you think needs to change in the Chiefs quarters? Because I mean, you're obviously very passionate about this topic, and I mean, from a junior standpoint. So the weird thing that is going to be probably weird for Josh and I to talk about it, which is, I mean, it's good that we're talking about this now, so other people can listen to it and chime in. However, but from a juniors or from an E1 to E6 perspective, I feel, and probably a lot of people feel, that our words would fall on deaf ears, because at that point when you are a chief, you are like most chiefs come to the to any sort of naysayers or any sort of like confrontation from E6 and below with the fact that, like, you're not a chief, so you wouldn't understand. Like, you're not a chief, so like you just don't get the level of responsibility that I have to jump across this ravine to get to like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that's an easy button. It's not that it's one of those things that it's like, there are moments where I can't explain it to you. And I don't mean like, I can't tell you why homeboy got Sailor of the Year and you didn't necessarily, but like, I kind of can, but like there are things like that where I can't tell you what the eval rankings are until we sign evals. Stuff like, people use those as examples, and I think those are really obvious. And I don't think that any E6 and below are questioning those things at all. Like, it's obvious. They totally understand why those things are secret, right?
Right.
There are things that happen in there that I like, and it's rare, where it's like, like when, for instance, one of the things I use as an example, and I'm not saying that sweeping things under the rug has never happened in the history of the Navy, because of course it has. But as far as like chiefs screwing up, right? Like, so say we're in a foreign liberty port, right? And Chief Smith does something stupid, and of course the whole boat knows by 08 the next morning. No one sees DRB happen and this dude walk into the wardroom or the chief's mess and get lit on fire as a result, because that's what would happen to you. So, like, I mean, depending on what happened, right? There are times where I've seen chief accountability happen in that way, where like I've stood in the room when a senior chief went to captain's mess, and I thought it got handled in a way that, like, I thought was appropriate, because I thought that should be visible. I thought they should see that senior chief in his dress blue standing outside the wardroom waiting to go stand in front of the old man. And that's exactly what happened. And I don't know how often that happens, and I feel like it's probably pretty rare, but I thought they handled that correctly in that moment. But chief accountability generally happens behind the closed door of the chief's mess. So like, if Chief Smith does something stupid,
I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. Because I can tell you right now, from you're talking to us to try to get our perspective, and I can tell you right now that's happened while I was serving on a submarine, and the discourse that happened between the E6 and below, it was very negative. It was like, it's kind of like, what the hell? I mean, we all go out to sea on the same boat. We all have to sit here for odd hours of the day, and we all have to grind our butts off, and we all have to answer to somebody, except the chiefs. And that puts a very sour taste in the majority of your crew's mouth, because the majority of your crew is E6 and below.
Yep. Go ahead.
Those situations literally happen on Liberty ports. Like, it always, there's always the one super senior guy that clearly knows better, and he messes up in port, and then everyone's talking about it the next day on duty. Oh, did you hear what Senior Chief so-and-so, he came back super crazy, like he was throwing stuff all out, he was puking, blah, blah, blah. And then nothing happens.
Yeah. So
or at least we don't actually see anything happen.
Here's my answer. Because like it depends. I think the stuff that happens behind closed doors probably happens behind a closed door more often than it should. There are moments you're in this weird balancing act where am I going to kneecap this chief so that his ability to lead is compromised in that way because he did something stupid, or if it's low level enough that I can correct it like I would because if I'm going to destroy you, right? Like if you did something stupid and it's not something I'm going to put you on report for, it's not something I loathe writing counseling sheets because I think you guys' brains turn off as soon as I sit in front of you with a counseling sheet. So like the only time I do that is if it's like I've already tried to intervene and like emotional appeals and yelling and whatever else I think will work before I formally document anything. I've already exhausted those options like 3 or 4 times. And now it's like, look, man, it's starting to hurt the rest of the group. I'm going to start documenting it formally. Get your head out of your butt. But I feel like if it's not something that's like, if it's low level and I can handle it, I'm going to pull them aside behind a closed door, just like I would pull you behind a closed door, because I don't want to embarrass you in front of your friends. But then I think that gets abused in the Chiefs mess because we have that closed door and because we have this weird fraternity mentality that I think a lot of times when chief or senior chief gets silly in a Liberty port and clearly acts stupidly, that should be a public shaming. Like I had an XO where it's like, he did some dumb stuff, man. They told us all to not get in drinking contests with the South Koreans. And then what did the whole wardroom do? And then they come back and act stupid when they get to the boat. So the XO is on the 1MC the next morning. And he's like, I'm putting myself and the entire wardroom on Liberty risk because we did exactly what we weren't supposed to do. And like, that's not the way we want people to behave on the submarine. That's not how leaders do things on submarines. And so we're not going to leave the submarine for the next couple Liberty ports. But then the stuff that I have a pretty probably controversial opinion on chief accountability as far as like, if we're talking about like FT2 would go to captain's mast for this and probably lose a stripe. I think, Senior Chief Smith should go to captain's mast and lose the star over his anchor. Like, I don't think that, right. and I don't know if that's the right level necessarily because of the leadership. So like maybe they go up to and see the Commodore, but like, I think that possibility should exist. I think if you do something stupid to the flavor of like FT2 would get busted down for this. I think that chief should get like burned to the ground, like to the flavor of like, if I'm going to hold an FT2 accountable and take a stripe and take money and take freedom away for 30 or 45 days or whatever, this chief, like, or senior chief is like, I hold you to a higher standard. That's why I pay you more money, dummy. So like, you get to march up the hill, explain to the Commodore and the squadron CMC why you're such an idiot. And then I'm snatching that star and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. Because like that, I think that would send a better message. And then I think the like mea culpa that comes afterwards where like I had this experience once that's burned into my memory forever where I was at Subbase New London on shore duty and a chief got a DUI and I didn't even know the guy. Like I didn't know the chief got a DUI, but the command did. And so they had us at an all hands call in Dealey Theater or whatever. I think that's what it's called. And I mean, there's like 150 submariners from all over the like shore duty command because Subbase New London and Tenant commands, right? And this dude had to stand on that stage in front of the movie screen and explain what happened and like own it and apologize to the room and explain to them like why that's not what chiefs do and how he's tarnished his anchors. And like
I've seen that several times.
That's cool. I feel like that's like on top of the non-judicial punishment that can and should happen. And I like to a point where I think like if there's a chief that's doing chief things on a submarine and then does something like that, snatches anchors. I think that should happen. And I think that fear, that healthy fear should exist where it's like, no, bro, you're not invincible. I don't want to hear act of Congress ever come out of a chief's mouth. I want them to know that like the Commodore can snatch their soul out of their body at any time.
I was going to say that's one thing in response to what we were talking about. That's one thing that I heard all the time from several chiefs when I was serving is I get or Congress appoints me or Congress gave me my rank, captain can't take this away or some crap like that. But I think, if everybody has the same level of risks as far as their career goes, then you like, why would you not want that to happen? I mean, okay, I shouldn't ask that question because I could answer that question with a couple of points myself. But I feel like you would garner or create better following. Like your subordinates would want to follow you more and have more respect for you if you were all on equal footing. Not the same rank. You don't have to be the same rank to be equal footing, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, 100%.
I totally get that.
What's bizarre to me is in other services that can happen. Like a sergeant first class in the Army can go to Article 15 and get reduced in rank by his commanding officer. Like, that's it. You're done. You're a staff sergeant. Have fun making it back to E7. And it's just like, I don't understand why it's not real. And it's not like the Act of Congress thing is not even real. Like, you can go to court martial and it's just, you're going to get busted down. But it's not, I'd have to do more research. It could happen at Admiral's Mast. I'm not sure, but
Josh,
I know.
What are you thinking over there, man? You're not saying a whole lot right now.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying not to interrupt too much, but it's there is almost like that perspective of like, how many times did we say, oh, what's the worst that's going to happen to him? He's gonna get put on he's gonna get moved to another command, or he's gonna get a talking to. Nothing really bad is gonna happen to somebody with anchors. At least so we never saw much.
There's administrative mechanisms, so they have these things called letters of reprimand and letters of instruction and stuff like that, where they'll put a letter in your record where you're never going to get promoted again. But like, that's not good enough. Like, that's not it. Things happen. Things that happen that you don't see, and that's the problem. Is like, you guys look at that chief, and there's still a chief representing the mess as a whole, but then now they know they're never going to get promoted again. So how's that going to affect their mentality? Blah blah blah. So
I've seen like senior chiefs that I've seen a cob get his fish taken away as a punishment because of something that he did.
Wow.
And that's humiliating. Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What happened to him? He retired
as a master chief, probably. Yeah.
So he got embarrassed, and that's I'm sure it hurt his pride quite a bit. But at the end of the day, he pretty much just carried on as usual.
Good on that CO for finding a mechanism at least. But like, I would say, like, because there's also this weird concept where you have to figure into the calculus when you're disciplining a person like that is retirement eligible, and part of the punishment is like, okay, you don't get to Navy anymore. It's like, up to that point, did he give 21 years of honorable service and then he started acting crazy? Because then you have to figure into that calculus, like, should he be allowed to retire? Sure. But should he retire at a lower pay grade? Absolutely. And how severe is that? Like, how severe is what he did? And then you have to figure out, like, how far down are you going to reduce him? But like, that dude shouldn't have retired a master chief, in my opinion. And I like the move to take away his fish, depending on, if it was that kind of an infraction, which I'm assuming it was.
So I think that there's definitely, like, you're not going to treat somebody who has clearly done a lot for the Navy. If they made it to a position of a cob, they clearly have been a rock star for a long time. And you're not going to treat that guy the same way for making a mistake that you would treat an E3. It's not going to happen. And I don't think anyone would expect that to happen. So I do know that you treat somebody the way that they deserve to be treated.
Right. So
I don't think that anyone thinks that the punishments are necessarily doled out unfairly. But it does, like, maybe a little bit of a small amount of transparency in places that can be allowed to be transparent would definitely help people kind of deal with those things better.
Yeah.
And
I think that, I think the transparency piece applies not just to the accountability, which I think a lot of that stuff getting better communicated to the crew would help with a lot of that. Like them and this, the funny part, like, it's not funny, the ironic part about that senior chief I talked about that went to mass was, like, he was the senior chief on board that everyone on the submarine unquestionably would have, like, laid down in traffic for if they thought it was in his best interest. Like, all he did was take care of it. And, like, he got in trouble because he violated his integrity and told a lie when he was asked about the status of a system, because his guys had a bunch of procedural violations and they were getting punched in the face and morale was low. And he's like, I can't let them get punched in the face again. And so he told a lie, and then he realized what he had done, and then he immediately ratted on himself. And so, like, that's the dude that went to captain's mast. So it's like, it was ironic that, like, like, it's great that happened that way, but it sucks that was the situation that we used to like let everybody know we're holding Chiefs accountable, because most people probably would have been cool with him skating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is kind of funny because it sounds like this whole episode is like, how do we make Chiefs accountable? But like in reality, it's just like if you want to talk about like E6 and below perspective on Chiefs, and you want to talk about how you can possibly change the Chiefs quarters, or you want to talk about how like Chief and E6 and below coexistence can go in a positive direction, or a more positive direction, transparency, or at least a little bit more of transparency, an effort to do that would go a long way. Because what happens when the E6 and below don't really get that information, they start making conspiracy theories, if you will, about what's going on in the boat. And they start like, you want to talk about climate, or command culture. You want to talk about all this deck plate gibberish and all that kind of stuff. They start coming to their own conclusions, and then it just starts tearing apart the cohesion of the group. So if you have that transparency and you communicate, or if there is a lack of transparency, you kind of give a reason, like treat everybody like adults, like. And that empathy we were talking about earlier, if you were on the other side, if you were that E3 or that E5, and you wanted to understand why you couldn't know, what would you expect to hear? And that would go a long way, because it's not like all Chiefs are bad.
Yeah, and the stuff that drives me absolutely like ape is that they were that E5. You know what I mean? Like, we don't populate the mess with anybody except for people that have been have stepped in all the places you guys are stepping. So it's like, it blows my mind that it's not more of a thing. But I agree 100% that it needs to be. That's what kind of where I was going with the accountability piece also, but like Chiefs initiation with the stuff that happens behind a closed door. Like, here's why it happens behind a closed door. Like, I feel like just the attempt at transparency, even if there's things that I can't tell you everything, but this is how this works. And I don't think there's any harm in me sitting there explaining to you exactly how we rank E6s, or like the process. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you like what we said about you in the room, because there's a different, that's going to be harmful, and that's going to harm unit cohesion just as much as the secrecy does. But like me letting you guys know this is exactly how we do it. This is the process. I don't think there's any harm in that. Like, you can read a Sailor of the Quarter instruction. It's got the grading sheet, and I'll explain to you what the board process is and all that other crap. And so it's like, you kind of like, you've got the answers to the test. Like, if you want to perform at that level, that's how you're going to get recognized eventually with that type of an award. Same thing with EPs and everything else. It's like, it shouldn't be, and generally isn't, a popularity contest. Which I know a lot of people think it is, but because of that lack of transparency, everybody just thinks it's a popularity contest.
It's funny that. Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because that you said everyone thinks it's a popularity contest. And I was going to say the number one reason that I ever heard anything negative is that would like ruin morale or anything like that concerning the Chiefs mess and leadership, is when people were left to their own devices to come up with whatever reasons they wanted. They start saying that, it's because A gang is, like the Chiefs pets or whatever, or like, this, that, and the third. Like,
something that I have noticed is that the guys who have the chief that is clearly like he's kind of like what do you guys call him? Like a bull chief or something like that, where they're like, where they're very influential in the quarters, right? Like,
we don't really, there's not a name for him exactly, but like, I was that guy on my last submarine because I was a senior chief, and the Cobb liked to disappear after 10 a.m. in the OCAB because the last boat was a BN, and then my CO would come get me after 10 in the morning. Like, it was ridiculous. So yeah, go ahead.
So you have these very influential chiefs that their opinion matters more than others, and so that guys from, if say like you have one guy that deserves it. Mm-hmm. And you're really, really, really pushing for this guy to get Junior Sailor of the Year, and someone else may be more deserving of it, but you don't have you don't have a perspective on that guy, but you're pushing for this other guy. So the one that I've noticed, and I've actually personally experienced, that my chief fighting on my team for me got me a better result, because he was able to sway the group towards his opinion.
You're not wrong, and I don't think that like mechanism ever will fully go away, but there's having been that guy a lot, like I've been that guy to the point that I've purposely kept my mouth shut in some of those ranking boards because I knew if I started pushing, it's like I was gonna win, because like those guys looked up to me. They like, my opinion mattered to them. So if I said this is the guy, they were like, oh well, he must be the guy. And so a lot of the votes would go my way, and it was to the flavor of like when Mike Cobb was in ranking boards or those like we're doing maps or we're doing whatever, I'd flip out on him if he opened his mouth, like at all, unless it was like to stop some people from arguing or something. Like if you're gonna insert your opinion, unless something is so egregious and one of us doesn't catch it, like you're 51% of the vote, bro. Like keep your mouth shut. If you say something on behalf of one of the sailors in here, a lot of the votes are going to go his way just because the Cobb said it. And so it's like, you got to be really careful, that kind of stuff. And one of the things, having been that guy so many times, that I'm going to try to like, I'm going to write a lot of metric driven instructions and processes so that it like removes as much of that as possible, so that the quiet chief, like it's leveling the playing field a little bit for them, so that if they're, because there's what should be happening. And that was one of the things that I would do is like, if my guys weren't cutting the mustard, man, I'd be like, no, we're not. Because other people would look at me and be like, are you going to argue for your guy? And I'm like, no, we're not there yet. Like, we're not at the promotable section yet. So like, no, if they're not performing at that level, I'm not going to argue for them to get a higher promotion recommendation than they deserve.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because a lot of people do. They just like, if there's an EP to give out, they're going to like champion their person because they just want to win.
Yeah. I had my first taste of like, rankings when I made first class, and they're all right, all the first classes get together and let's rank our people. And I was one of the type of people that like, I didn't really associate that much with my own division. I was a diver and a FT, so I did a lot of stuff outside my division. I worked with egging a lot. I worked at torpedo men a lot. I worked with sonar techs a lot. I worked with everybody a lot. And so when we went into this ranking thing, and I know that one of the guys from another division is a very strong, he's definitely should be getting an EP. Yep. And I'm like, and no one's speaking up for him because he has a weak first class.
Yeah.
His first class is just sitting over there like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. He's not doing anything to fight for him. I'm like, hey man, this guy right here is way better than anyone you were talking about. And I don't understand why you're not out here fighting for your guy, because he's great. And you're not saying anything.
That's how it should be. That's how it should happen. Because I was the same way. Like there were moments in ranking boards or whatever board we were doing for a meritorious achievement or evals or whatever, where a chief because it had inevitably, because there was no instruction, because there were no metrics, like you weren't required to prepare a package, you weren't required to do whatever. Like they'd walk into eval ranking boards like 5 minutes removed from talking about some maintenance item that was like freaking underway limiting or whatever, where like their mind isn't even in it. They're not prepared. They didn't have any time to like get eval bullets from like MMA2. So they're in there and they brief their guy off the top of their head. And when they're done, it's like, anybody got anything else? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this dude's got like a major collateral duty. He like came down and like fixed everything in the galley for me or whatever. Like he did a whole bunch of crazy, or like, isn't that guy an ACFL, but the CFL was gone, so he ran the whole PFA himself and we had 0 failures? Like, isn't that a thing that happened also in addition to the 5 things you remembered? And so it's just like, there needs to be less subjectivity in instances like that. And then there needs to be like a cultural standard set where it's like, we want the best and fully qualified. That's what it says in the precepts. So it's like when we're doing things like that, when we're mapping people or we're doing eval ranking boards or whatever, like you said, unfortunately, a lot of the times it's this like shooting from the hip type of thing where we just, hey, there's a Chiefs meeting today. Well, what are we doing at the Chiefs meeting? Oh, we're doing E6 rankings. Like what? And it's in like 20 minutes. And you're just like, that's not how that should happen, but that's how it does happen a lot of times. And I don't think anybody goes into that room with like the intention of sucking at it or the intention of not ranking people the best way that they can. But human beings are going to human beings. So they're going to argue for their people because they have an emotional attachment to them. But it's like, you got to detach yourself from that and realize like if it was more metric driven, I think it would make it a lot easier and provide more clarity for the people on that board. But if you have these sailors and you have just that like FT1 that qualified dive, like he's a battle stations dive. He's like a freaking, I don't know, like AQAO, and he's like doing all this other crap, like, and he's crushing it, and his division's crushing it. They did great on, like, I think they call it Cree now, or it still used to be TRE, but yeah, like just doing, he's obviously the guy that should be number one EP Sailor of the Year person. And we're over here arguing for like and no offense to my yeoman, but like the YN1 that's like 97 weeks dink duty chief and does does that's a real life example, by the way, does admin things kind of well when VIPs come on board, and we're going to give him an EP, or we're going to rank him above FT1. Like, are you out of your mind? But because he's got a strong advocate in that room, you know what I mean? Like, that's not the way that's supposed to happen. And it should be very like metric driven. There should be a lot of quantitative, like data that I can point at where it's like, are they punching all the boxes? And if they're this guy, like, because there could be somebody qualified dive that sucks. You know what I mean? Like, they just wanted to stand dive instead of room watch.
I got to be honest. I think that a lot of times, and I'm kind of thinking about it now, which is kind of weird. But when I was on the boat, I would think like just not enough time in the day. Mm-hmm. But that was it was like a crappy excuse to say, like, you want to talk about any sort of topic of the day-to-day task at hand that you wanted to do better. Yeah. Whether you're talking about maintenance items, whether you're talking about leadership, whether you're talking about how to get the shipyard to get their head out of their butts and get, the day-to-day going better. The common answer would be like that there's just not enough time in the day. And for me personally, when I was on my boat, leadership was something that I was really, really focused on. I tried to I think I created an organization that was like supposed to try to get junior sailors to think about how they could be better leaders and be the leadership position that's the next ranked, so that they're deserving of that next rank and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I ran into the most was just the time. Divisions being taken for whatever sort of maintenance items, chiefs not being able to focus on this because they're focusing on a million different things. Officers not having the bandwidth to even, kind of reach across the aisle to impart some sort of leadership that they might have learned because they're just officers and they're doing wardroom stuff. And I think that might be like when we're talking about this, I'm like, this is all good and all that we're talking about how you can possibly, make chiefs and E6s and below more effective and coexist together and make that better. But realistically, a lot of people are going to hear this and go back to the commands, and it's just going to fall on deaf ears, and it's just going to be like, there is no time. Yeah. So I think that there needs to be like a straight up just like start back at square one and make time in a day. Like I used to sit there and be like, why don't like, instead of like having this sort of reinventing the wheel kind of thing, when you talk about like planning your finances and saving money, you pay yourself first. Like some people say you should pay yourself first and then blah, blah, blah. That way you can make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your savings goal that you have or whatever. Pay yourself first by making it mandatory that every day your division spends time talking about what we think leadership is, what we think we can do to fill the roles in leadership here. Like maybe just ask a candid question like, hey guys, on our day-to-day, what's working and what's not? What are you upset about and what do you think is going well? Those kinds of things, and you make those mandatory, you stop talking about how little time you have to do all these other things, because now people are naturally becoming better leaders who think about the wider scope of things and who actually feel like people care around them and they want to work better. Yeah. But not enough people can buy it, or not enough people buy into something like that. Yeah. That's the problem. It's like what I've seen it, especially in my last submarine, because like BNs, like you're basically punching holes in the ocean. Like so it's a training platform. Mm-hmm. Like have you guys been on BNs? You guys are just fast boat guys, right? It's okay. I did an 88 for my first boat. I did a Project Submarine for my second one. And then I did a BN on my last one. And so BNs, it's like you're punching holes in the ocean. So you're a training platform. A lot of times you hear him talk, we're training for inspections because the mission is so mundane. It's like it gets pushed to the background because you're literally just going into a mission area and punching holes in the ocean in case World War III happens. That's it.
Like that's what we're doing. And so you're finding yourself in these situations where everybody would talk. Like one of the biggest complaints, and I was the CMO on my last boat too, so I got to do all the command climate survey stuff. One of the biggest complaints you would ever hear is the war on white space, and just they're talking about white space in the plan of the week and the plan of the day. Where I mean, just burdened, just like laden down with meetings and trainings and like just drills and stupid, like constantly. It's like you just had to fill the day with something. So it's like on that platform, especially, it's like it was all of the pain that we went through and the whole we don't have time to do anything and people aren't getting enough sleep was all self-inflicted. There was so much crap that could have been an email or like, why are we even having this meeting at all? Like, just do your job. Or do we really need to do this many drills just for the sake of doing drills or whatever? It was just like, well, this is just what we do on BNs was the answer. And it was just like, it drove me absolutely nuts. But you have to have somebody at the triad level that is going to push and say like, hey, Skipper, let's not do that because that's dumb. And let's program all these other things in because like if I do invest on the front end in leadership development and education, we're going to get a better product across the board with everything we do. And then you will have more efficiencies and more competent people doing a better job. So you don't have to have as many meetings and maybe we don't have to do quite as much training and maybe you don't have to do so many drills and code reds and blah, blah, blah. And it's like the other thing I've seen also though is like there are existing mechanisms for some of this stuff to happen. And so like I don't think it happened on my other boats, but on the last one on the BN, you'd go to a pre-watch brief. So you'd go like the supervisory watches and this one all the way down to like, I mean, we had the FTOW, the quartermaster, the freaking all the people. Yeah. That level of supervisory element all the way up to the officer deck. And we had this really stupid thing on a boomer just because we had to invent a fake watch for department heads. It was called Department Head of the Watch. They would just come relieve the office of the deck sometimes. It was stupid. But so they'd all be there at the pre-watch brief. And so we're talking about like the night orders and like these are the things, evolutions we're going to do and when we're going to do them and blah, blah, blah. And then we'll all explode and change and the whole watch would be different and whatever. But you do the pre-watch brief and talk about those things and you just brief like the conditions. It was almost like a where you're like networking during turnover. Like you go get your turnover from the guy you're going to relieve and then you go into the pre-watch brief and talk about it. And not some value, but not a ton. And then you do a post-watch training. And so you'd get relieved, you'd eat, you'd do cleanup, and then everybody would gather for post-watch training. It was like initially it was supposed to be like a post-watch hot wash of everything that happened. And like, you're talking about lessons learned and you're talking about what we could have done better or whatever. Sometimes it was experience with that too. Yeah. Sometimes it was that. And sometimes it was just like this mandatory, like, gather all the people, waste a little bit more of their time and get a little less sleep. And so it's like those mechanisms, I think, came from a good place of like submariners. We learn from our mistakes and we go belabor them and we critique them and we just try to drill down and find out what happened, why it happened, and how we can do better next time. And so like I think you could get a lot more out of those. Like I have every intention of, if I'm a cob, showing up at the majority of those post-watch trainings and just deboing like 20 minutes of it, because it's like you're going to talk for 5 minutes and want to let your watch section go, and that's awesome. But instead of me artificially blocking off time for you to show up for leadership training, I can just walk in and do it there. I've already got you there. I don't know if that's the best time to do it because everybody just got off watch and they want to get the fuck out of there, but like something like that, like some of those mechanisms already exist to do the things you were talking about. But I also think the biggest piece of it is like what I said earlier, where it's just like, you just got to make it a priority. It's what you said earlier. Like you just have to make it a priority. You just have to decide that it's important enough.
Well, I think everyone was always receptive and wanted to chime in on any topic of conversation that was going to positively affect them. If you were talking about things to do in, well, that's not a good idea because that was 50-50. But, you know, just anything that might like just make their life a little bit better. They'd be like, I think we could, you know, everyone's full of ideas. Everyone's got the best idea to offer up on any topic. So when you start talking about something like leadership or how you make people, I don't know, nicer to each other or more courteous or supportive, people are going to be like, yeah, I think we should do this. And, you know, not everyone's got the idea that you should go with, but it's definitely going to have some engagement there. And, you know, it doesn't, you said there are those blocks of time and space that could probably be best served for something like that. But even if it's not those kinds of space, time blocks that you use, going into it with like your morning quarters or whatever the heck you do in the morning, right. Or something just before you guys break for lunch, where just like, hey, I don't know, like for me, if I was the LPO, I would be like, I could see myself being like, hey guys, I'm checking out this book. I just wanted to read you something real quick and see what you guys thought about it. Or I watched this guy's lecture, wanted to show you something from what he said and what you guys thought about it. I personally, I'm not talking to you as ET1 or whoever the heck right now. I'm just talking to you as a dude. Like, what do you guys think about this? Do you think he's full of shit, or do you think he's talking about something that's legit? Like, yeah, like leveling with people.
I had some experience actually doing that with. I've always been like a leadership development and education guy. Shocking, right? Like I've been doing this for 5 years in my free time. But I got to the last BN and we were in a shipyard period, and then we went into the OCAB after. And then I gathered people and I was like, hey, we're going to do, it was back when it was still like CPO 365 phase 1 or whatever. Now it's Sailor 360 and they just keep changing the name. But doing that like leadership training with first classes ahead of the chief season. And I was just like, do we have a program? And they're like, nope, not really. Like this dude owns like the initiation stuff, but most units don't have an actual program. If they do, it's like this haphazard like garbage that barely ever happens. And if it does, it's like this Mando fun feeling where it's just like, oh god, checking this box so this guy can put it on his eval. But we did it where like I posted those pictures of the studio area, right? So like I did like the first one I ever did was like history and heritage training, and it's like I collect a bunch of chief stuff, and I have like some pretty cool stuff, like stuff that you think should be in a museum, and like somehow I have it because eBay is awesome. But I brought all that stuff in and like set it all up, and then I gathered like I think I had like 15 first classes because it was the OCAB. It was easy to Devo people in there, and you could see like the engagement where they at first they walked in there. A couple of them had like the phase 1 binder PQS thing, and the rest of them were just like, ugh, like okay, I have no excuse to not be here, so I guess I'll sit here. And by the time I started talking and like showing them, it was like you could see them be like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And you got engagement out of it. And then the next one I brought, it was a retired CMC that when he was a CMC that project's boat, it was his third cob tour, and he had been a CMC in between. And he's just like this knuckle dragon A-ganger that like, yeah. I mean, he was almost petrified by the time he was retired, dude. Like he's like a break glass in case of emergency type of dude. And I learned how to be a chief from this guy, and he was amazing. He won the Frank Lister Award, which is like the best cob in the submarine force.
Wow.
Just great dude. So I brought him in to speak to them and like dispense wisdom. Right. And at that point, based on like word had spread, I had like 50 first classes in a classroom, and they were like from different units and stuff. And they were like sitting on the edge of their seat with like a look on their face, like they were witnessing living history. Like it was nuts. And I do it too. Like when I've heard this guy talk, like I remember being a chief select standing in front of this guy where like usually I had this panicked feeling where I was like, how do I get out of here? Like, but like this dude, you'd be tasked with something, and it was like a history and heritage thing, or we had to do book reports, and we'd give like status updates to see if we were actually reading the books. And of course we weren't, because we were barely even sleeping. And so like they'd yell at us for a second, but then he would start talking about the book. Not only like he read it, but he would talk about it like he was there. And I'm just like, how are you this good? It was like he was the dude from Quantum Leap, and he was just like talking about it like he was there and he watched it happen. And so I remember sitting there with that stupid look on my face, and I'm watching all these first classes just like on the edge of their seat. And it was awesome because I like got to ask him all these questions and whatever. And then like by the end of it, like they were all just like shaking his hand and like, thank you so much for coming and like all that crap. And then like we were leaving the building, and he's like thanking me 6 times before we got to the quarterdeck, because he got to like be cob again for an hour. You know what I mean? And he'd been retired for 3 or 4 years. And so he was like, it was a gift to him. And then it was a gift to all these people in the room. And I'm like, I'm just the dude that set it up. And it's like doing stuff like that it's not even difficult, but it's like when you actually put meaning behind it, and there's that authentic desire to like train and educate these sailors, like you were saying, just share. Like I did stuff where I do like the Jocko Willink TED Talk on extreme ownership, and they're just like, holy crap. Like, cause like who's going to argue with a Navy SEAL anyway? Like, yeah, of course a dude walks in the room and just has trident credibility. So it's like, and then he's also like this amazing combat leader that has all these crazy experiences. And he's talking about like the concept of extreme ownership was born from him screwing up and having to take ownership of something that he thought was going to get him fired as a CO. And so it's just like, I mean, it's awesome. And so they're just like, holy crap. And a bunch of great conversations. And I had I have stacks of his books like that I just give to people all the time. So I had a stack of books on one of the cruise mess tables and just handed them out. And it was just like, you get that engagement when it's meaningful and when there's authenticity behind it, where it's like, you can tell when the trainer or facilitator or whatever cares about what they're doing. So it's like if a command made it a priority and you have somebody that can do that, and it's not an easy thing to do. Like I know that I kind of have a talent for this stuff. Like I know that I'm pretty good at like motivating a group of people or like getting them fired up about something. Mm-hmm. Like I've developed that ability over a long period of time. And I like, it helps that I actually am super passionate about this stuff. And it's hard to fake that, but it's like, it's not hard to go find somebody like me or like that retired Cobb who's like kind of like that, where it's like, I know if I put that man in front of a group of people, they're going to be enthralled. Like I'm positive he's never off when he's in those situations. Like he loves it. Mm-hmm. So when he gets to do that, it's like, I can go find those people if I'm not the guy, like just facilitate it. And then there's plenty of those old crusty retired guys that are just like chomping at the bit to be around sailors. Like I have this picture of, we were doing the chief season when I was at CSA school, and we did it with a recruiting district. And the benefit of that was there was a bunch of other services. So we got to do a bunch of cool stuff with other service NCOs. And one of the basically the senior enlisted for the Marine Corps Food Service School was a master gunnery sergeant that had gone through the chief season, because that happens where you bring other service NCOs in when it's possible. And he went through the chief season with a corpsman chief in Iraq. So he had been an accepted chief, like the definition of, for longer than any of us had ever been. Like he'd been around forever. So he got us into I forget what the name of it is, but the Marine Corps drill thing in DC. We took a heritage trip to DC, and he got us into the old Marine barracks during one, and we got to sit there and watch one of those shows where the Marine Corps drill team, I think they're called like the Commandant's Own or something like that. That's like the silent drill, and freaking incredible, super, super cool thing to watch. But we're like all in khakis and the selects are in NSUs, and there's a bunch of civilians, obviously, because it's DC, it's a tourist area. And this little old lady, like she's probably 90 pounds in a vest she knitted herself. She walks up to me I'm sitting on the bleachers, and she's like standing kind of beneath it by the handrail. She tugs on the sleeve of my khakis. And she goes, excuse me. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she goes, that's Command Master Chief. I work for a living. And I was like, what? I'm like super confused about what's going on. She goes, what are you guys here for? And I was like, oh, we have a bunch of chief selects with us and blah, blah, blah. And she goes, can I talk to them? And I'm like, yes. And like I huddle them all around her. It turns out she's the first female command master chief of an aircraft carrier, and like had a doctorate in something and whatever. And so I have this picture of them all huddled around this little old lady staring up at them, like knife handing them, dropping wisdom. And I'm just like, this is the best day ever. And it's like those people exist. And she was at like a veterans home or something, like a nursing home. And they brought them there to see the drill show. And she was like, hey, look, chiefs, and just walked right up to us. And those people exist everywhere. And it's like, you could just do that. Like you don't have to, if you're the chief that is soft-spoken and not going to be the person that gets in front of a group of people and like gets them all fired up about topic X, go find somebody that can. Like they're all over the place. And a lot of people, of course, like, a 3-time Cobb Frank Lister Award winner, like same thing as a Navy SEAL. Like they're going to inspire that credibility as soon as they walk in the room. Like that dude's done everything. Like he's been everywhere. He's done everything. He's going to inspire credibility from the first word that comes out of his mouth. So it's like same thing. Like she was the same way, where it was just like, she was amazing. And like, you could just see the selectees just like dumbfounded that they got to stand there and listen to this lady talk to him. And it was cool for her. Obviously she was super pumped to see a bunch of chiefs. So yeah, man, I think it's, you make it a priority and then you do things like that are meaningful. And I like, underway, obviously it's going to be hard to do. So hopefully you've got somebody that can do meaningful like leadership development and education. But at the same time, when you're underway, is that really the priority? Like I'm going to be more focused on operational stuff than I am that kind of stuff. But yeah, man, I think you make it a priority and it can be really, really meaningful. Now that I'm done monologuing, now that my monologue is complete, let's shift to to you guys talking for once. And it'll be like, tell me about how you guys, and I don't know, I read the website about section and it sounds like there's more than just the two of you, but let me know how, like, we'll start with Test Depth and then get to on the Midwatch podcast. But like, how did you guys start this? Like, what was it born from? And then like, what's the goal?
So there we were
on the Midwatch.
This whole thing with Test Depth started when we were back in Norfolk, stationed on the same ship, on the same boat. And we were like, dude, actually what we first did was we recorded like a practice podcast kind of thing. Okay. And it was, I mean, I also did this other thing where I was like training Ellison, like doing some physical training with him, and he was trying to, do some other stuff. And we're like, hey, there's not really a brand of clothing, because like there's all this like veteran owned businesses out there,
but it's all like
and
Army
I was like,
and stuff.
Yeah, I was like, where's the submarine stuff? There's really nothing. Like anything that does exist is super corny.
Yeah,
and it's just like, I'm not gonna wear a t-shirt that says that. Like, it's really just like they're just kind of doing the bare minimum. And I was like, why don't we just start our own like clothing company? And then from the clothing company, it went to somewhat of a lifestyle brand, and then we're like, well, we want to do a podcast. And we have another friend of ours that's not on the show with us today, Dan Shelley, who was also on the boat with us, and he's a personality. Like, he's just got a personality on him. And we're like, let's do a podcast. I think people will actually might enjoy listening to us. And so we've been doing this for almost a year now. Is that right, Ellison?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, so we've been doing it for about a year, as far as the business goes, and it's been very, very slow start.
Yeah,
we're only going off of our own capital, so we're not borrowing any money to get stuff manufactured. It's kind of just like whatever we've got, because we both work, and I'm going to school. Ellison, you're still going to school, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're both in college right now, and so we have only so much time in the day to dedicate to the business and to the podcast and to school and to work, and so it's
we both have wives that we don't want to leave us. So
yeah.
Ditto. I understand that. There's been more than once where like she's like, you've been doing a lot of podcasts lately, and I'm just like, if we get to the point where it's too much, just tell me and I'll figure it out. Like, I'm not making money off this. I just love doing it.
Just throw something at me from the living room.
Yeah. I've told her like more, and she's not great with confrontation, but it's just like I've gotten her to the point over 6 years now that it's just like she'll give me that you've been doing a lot of podcasts lately, and that means
she'll give you that
slow
look,
down.
You'll know. I understand.
Yeah. So like, where do you guys see it going from here? Because like I love that you're doing it on your own and with your own money, because like I think that's the way to go. But where do you see it going from here? Like, what's the end goal?
Well, I think we want it to be everything that submariners want it to be. Honestly, when we were talking about this, when we were on the boat, and we were talking about how there isn't this thing for our community, we just like really didn't understand why. I mean, like, SEALs have forged, Rangers and all that. Like, Army dudes have, I guess, Black Rifle Coffee Company is one kind of thing that they have.
Yeah,
and
Army's got like grunt style and like
they've got a bunch
ton
of stuff.
11 Bravos, all kinds of crap.
A 9 line I think is also Army.
Yep. There's a ton of them.
So they've got a lot of these other communities have veteran owned businesses that pay homage to the community. Related to them, and we just didn't understand why we couldn't have something that kind of grasps that identity that like we kind of jive with, or we feel like the majority of people would like to jive with. Like you said, there's a lot of corny companies out there for submarines right now, and that's completely fine because there are people who would prefer that, but we also serve with some pretty crass and just candid people in the submarine community, and we wanted to like be able to harness that. So as far as where we want this to go, we want this to be as big as it possibly can be. But like we said, we're doing this with our own capital right now, and slowly trying to get the engagement from our following and get people to like, I don't know, to just to share our efforts, because we have, I think our following right now is about like 700. If we can get people to continue to spread the word, it'll gain us more exposure, which will help our traction. But we definitely want this to be like a legitimate like namesake for the submarine community. Like we say what we are, the premier submariners lifestyle and apparel brand, because that's exactly who we claim to be. That's exactly what we want to be, and no one else is trying to do it like we are. And and so we stepped up to do that, and when we can, we absolutely want to constantly put our best foot forwards with the kind of products that we give, like as far as like what they look like, how people like them, what people want, and that comes with engagement and whatnot. So
it's awesome, man. Like I dig it, because like I've been same thing in the back of my mind, but it was more focused on like obviously part of what I identify with is submarines is a big part of it, but like CS stuff, Chief stuff, like it's all super corny and low quality in my opinion. Like I haven't seen many, like there's a lot of Chiefs that do like side hustles that, like there's one called, I can't remember, something about snapbacks. It's like, he does like hats primarily, but he does like some shirts and board shorts and stuff that they're not bad. Not exactly like my style or whatever, but like they're better than the crap you see in like the Navy prize section of the NEX. And it's just like, there's nowhere else to go, man. Like besides Etsy and like these Chiefs Facebook groups where it's like people are making stuff, but it's mostly some guy with a CNC machine or like somebody just making really corny stuff that's not. It's like for 50 plus year old veterans and retirees. It's just not my thing. And I'm like, why can't I get like some Chief stuff that I'd actually wear in public and that's not gross? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think the thing about it too is like when we were talking about doing test steps, and I remember sitting on cruise mess and like trying to be like, all right, well, what's the logo gonna like? It needs to be, because I was when I was envisioning it, I was like, okay, hopefully in like some years down the road, this is like super legit. People. Constantly visit our website and they have our products. Like, so I was trying to come up with the brand name and the logo and all that kind of stuff like that. And I wanted to make it like super sleek, but kind of like minimalist and attractive. But then I was like, okay, I was thinking about like how I could do that and like what people would like. And then I was like, I don't just want to have a company that just pushes products. Like I want, like with Forged, if you were to think about Forged, I don't think, to each their own, but I'm not going to wear Forged gear because I'm not a freaking SEAL. And I feel like it'd be weird if I wore that clothing. But I want submariners to wear test step. We want people to wear test step stuff because they're submariners and because they like actually shoot the shit with each other. Whether they're listening to our podcast and like being like, that was freaking funny, or whether they're chilling with sailors and sticks and having a cigar and some drinks and like they're actually engaging with the community. Like there's a lot of submariners that I met in Groton when I was a sub school student that were out of the Navy that are super prideful still about their service, and like I don't blame them. And they freaking love it. And it shows you that people still want to stay connected to that camaraderie, that culture, that, I mean, I keep saying it, but like, I love and miss how candid and straight up that we are. That's one thing that you don't get in the civilian world that much. I'll tell you that. And so Test Step, we want it to be, a great company to give people dope products that they really like, but we also want it to be like actual, like legitimate community. And I like the way that, I talk to Josh about this all the time. I think that Black Rifle Coffee Company has the advantage of wherever they get their funds from. They've been doing pretty well, and that's their business. but the way they have everything look so freaking crisp and clean and all that kind of stuff all the time, like I hope eventually that we get to that level, because it's just, they get to do a lot more stuff with their community. You can tell they have fun with the guys that they served with. And
there's something about like all the SF guys from other services, like when they, like, it doesn't matter who, but it's like if they start businesses, it's like they all just call like Jocko Willink or Tim Kennedy and get on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then boom, revenue. You know, like those guys have connections that I feel like I'm not cool enough for or whatever, but it is what it is. I'm not exactly like, I have this I think it's, I've had a bunch of people encourage me to like monetize this, and it's just like, I have this ethical conflict with like, all I'm doing is leadership development right now. And it's like, I get paid as a senior chief in the Navy right now. And it's like, so am I, like, is it above and beyond? Like, duh. Yeah, for sure. But it's like, outside of trying to recoup my expenses, which I've set up a store selling like t-shirts and stickers and crap just for that. Like, all it's for is so that I can like help recoup all the money I spend on like the subscriptions and website and all that crap. But and then the new website, I just moved to Squarespace because it's so much better than WordPress. And I added like a donate button, and it's like for that express reason. It's just like, hey, like this costs me
Squarespace.
Dude, you do. It's so much better. But it's like, it's so much more functional than WordPress. And like, I got to the point where the site kept going down, and I just like, I couldn't figure, I'm not a tech guy. Like I can figure some stuff out, but it is more expensive, but it's so much better. It works so much better. And so like, I got over there and added the donate button for the same reason, because this stuff's expensive and I'm paying all out of pocket for all of this. So, so yeah, man. And it's like, but I also like have in the back of my mind, like, I want to do something with clothing and apparel and whatever at some point, just like a lot of heritage stuff and chief stuff and probably some submarine stuff and whatever, for the same reason. It's just like, I want to wear that. I'm prideful. I want to wear that stuff, but it's like, I'm embarrassed to wear a lot of, like, it's just not my style to wear a lot of the crap that you find at like the Next or in those Chiefs groups or wherever. And I can't honestly find much submarine stuff that like at all, let alone, you know, unless it's like some shirt we made on the boat for the boat, you know, or it's halftime. Those are terrible too. You
made mention about like how those dudes in the all those other veteran owned companies, they like just make a few phone calls, talk to Joe Rogan or Jock or whatever, and then they're like, boom, they got a huge following. But honestly, I look forward to the day, because Test Depth isn't going anywhere, and hopefully Don't Give Up the Ship podcast doesn't go anywhere. And the other people who are doing the stuff that we're doing in our community doesn't go anywhere, because we're going to carve out our own space in our own neck of the woods, you know. And if we like support each other, like working with Sailors and Sticks and getting to know Brian Brown and Nick Church over the past, well, I guess it's been a year, right, Josh? I mean, we knew we went underway with Nick, but you know, getting to know those guys and what they're doing. I mean, it's really dope to just meet people in the same community. They might be in different lanes, but meet people in the same community and just like let stuff happen naturally and genuinely.
Dude, that's how this whole podcast happened, man. Like 5 years in, and it's like I've gotten connected with all kinds of incredible people that it just like melts my brain. That like and it's super cool because it's not, they're all grinding in their own lane, and like like I think you guys talk to Tommy from 15 Fathoms recently?
Yeah, we had Tommy McConnell on our show. I think it was like the
dude.
First or second episode.
Yeah, love that dude. Like he reached out and like all these, and it's like, and I've had a lot of people contact me, and I've reached out to certain people, and it's just like, man, it's super cool that like I feel like I have this network of people, and I lean on them all the time for podcasts where I'm like, hey, come on and help me do this thing. Like the Teaching the Creed episodes is all people that I've just met through networking on the podcast. And like, I encourage you guys, if you're not already doing stuff on Reddit, like post your podcast on Reddit. You will absolutely get butchered in the comments probably, but like you'll also hook up with some really cool people through that too, man. Like, I've met and interviewed some really dope people.
We're all submariners, and I'm so used to getting shit on constantly that like it just doesn't even faze
that's
me.
what
you could be like,
all the moderators tried to warn me, like they're like, dude, you're gonna get, you're a chief and you're coming on here posting about like how to be a better leader. Like I just need you to understand what's about to happen. Like, these guys are going to destroy your soul. And I'm like, bro, I've been submarining for 20 years. Like, there's not a person on earth that's going to shame me into submission or like make my feelings hurt or whatever. So I'm like, good luck with that.
Yeah, you could be like God's gift to submariners, and still everybody else will talk shit about something that you're doing.
1,000%. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty certain I don't have a soul anymore. So
yeah,
at this point,
it's already been removed. Joke's on you, nerds. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
It was removed and replaced with dolphins or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Long time ago to land far, far away. All right, you guys got any save rounds, alibis? You want to at the very least put out like where everybody can find on the Midwatch, where everybody can find all the test depth stuff?
Yeah, sure. So you guys can go check the test depth out at www.teamtestdepth.com. That is our online storefront. And we also have a podcast that's on anywhere you can find podcasts, or most places you can find podcasts actually. And it's called Only on the Midwatch. Just check us out. Let us know if you guys like our content. And if you don't, I'm sorry. We'll do our best to appease you in the future, probably. We also are on Instagram at Test Depth and Twitter at Test Depth 1. So it's the number 1 after Test Depth, but we don't do anything on Twitter. So
nice. Yeah. All right. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes too, so people can find it and hopefully push a little traffic you guys' way, because I'm a big fan.
Appreciate that.
Supporting veteran-owned businesses, especially a bunch of bubbleheads trying to do good things, man. Because
we'll have to have you on our show.
Absolutely, man. 100%. I'm a little busy right now with all this crap I told you about before we started recording, but I'm about to be ramming in a hotel room in Hawaii in a few weeks. So I'll have a lot of time on my hands.
Sweet.
So all right, man, for sure. Us. Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. The perspective was super fun. I've been trying to wrangle junior enlisted without feeling like I'm a senior chief forcing them to do it. So this was perfect. It was awesome to get you guys.
Get some guys who are already out and don't care.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best kind, man, because you guys will be candid because there's no fear of repercussions.
Pretty much.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Man.
Catch you next time.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I had fun. We've been trying to line this up for a minute. In the show notes, he mentioned it at the end, but there's links to everything. So if you want to get to teamtestdepth.com, it's in there. If you want to get to their social media accounts, if you want to link to the podcast, it's all there. So go check those guys out, give them a follow, give them some business and support them. I'm a big fan of, if I can, using the platform to support veteran-owned businesses. But it was also fun to finally talk to junior enlisted submariners about their experience with leadership and everything else. So hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions for me or need anything, hit us up. Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast at gmail.com. You can Facebook message me, Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast, or you can DM me on Instagram or Reddit, DGUTS Podcast. Hit us up. You can get on Reddit in the subs and discuss the things with us and tell me how bad I am at interviewing, whatever you want to do, and just interact. That's the key. And then if you could help us out to get the word out, like, share, subscribe, review, all the things on all the platforms, social media, on everywhere you get podcasts. The more you do that, the more the algorithms like us enough to get the word out to the people that might be interested. So it's a big help when you can do that. So if you would, that would be lovely. And also, last thing, we got the website back up on Squarespace finally. So it's working way better. So if you want to support us, you can go to dgutspodcast.com/shop. Got stickers and magnets and t-shirts and stuff like that, so you get something, and then it helps us keep the lights on and pay the bills. We also added a donate button for the same reason. It's literally just to support the cost of doing this. Squarespace is more expensive than WordPress, which was effectively free with the exception of some plugins and stuff. And then, subscription fees to SoundCloud, a bunch of other stuff, equipment costs, whatever. So it helps recoup the cost of our doing this, because it all comes out of pocket. So if you can and you would like to, we got the donate button on the website now that's fully functional. And if you would like to go to the store and get a shirt or something and show your support, that would be lovely. And that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship.